Hello everyone, Prime here, and I hope you've had a great day, because today we're going to be going over Chaac Abyssal Executioner skin. It's a new skin coming to Smite, should be here next week. Its lore, backstory, and all of that good stuff, and because its lore and backstory is based off of the Cthulhu mythos, going to be talking about that again. Within the Cthulhu mythos, humans are essentially the strongest beings on the planet Earth, except that's not technically true. They believe themselves to be, as well we should. In today's age, we pretty much are the most superior thing on the planet. Well, superior species so far as we know. At least, we consider ourselves to be. After all, we do control a large portion of the Earth right now, and that seems like a fairly significant feat on its own. But within the mythos of Cthulhu, that's not quite the case. Lovecraft, the original author of this mythos, its original creator, detailed two types of beings that are vastly stronger than us. The Great Old Ones, who were powerful alien beings who wound up on Earth somehow. Perhaps they even ruled over the Earth at one point, but they decided to take a nap, and that's what they're currently doing. In his work, H.P. Lovecraft has written warnings about the vast power and threat that these beings command, but they're not exactly the strongest and most fearsome. There's actually a higher tier, and these are called the Outer Gods, and they're much older than the Great Old Ones, funnily enough. Most of them are pretty much out of our reach, because they exist outside of our reality. Some are even immortal. Some are omniscient, all-powerful, and just generally not the kind of thing humanity could possibly fight. Now, it seems fairly obvious that Chaac is one of these beings, but whether he's a Great Old One or an Outer God, we'll try to see. See, Azathoth is the father of all of these beings. He's immortal, he's got an endless appetite, and he's essentially chaos incarnate, whose name lips dare not speak aloud. That's how much fear he's supposed to command within the universe. He's always changing his shape, so you don't necessarily know what he might look like outside of some of his descriptions and what some of his titles may imply. And of course, as I said, like some of the beings that usually exist outside of the realms of reality, he also exists outside of our reality. There is a bit of an edgy side to him as well. He's said to be the bringer of the end, or in fact he has the ability to, one day, just want to consume everything, us included. And within the mythos itself, people have the ability to bring on this end, assuming that they have the right amount of knowledge of how to actually do this, and they're cynical or just crazy enough to actually want to do this. But why you'd want to actually summon the bringer of the end to the Earth, destroying not just the Earth, but the universe, all its inhabitants and everything in it, and perhaps even more than that, that's Azathoth. Now on a few of the depictions of Azathoth, because technically Azathoth probably wasn't given all that many by Lovecraft himself, and we are going to be mostly talking about Lovecraft's deities, as he was the original author of this mythos after all. See, because Azathoth is always changing shape, you can't really get a solid idea of what exactly he looks like. But in some images on the internet that I found of him, you can see him with sort of this very alien several teeth mouthed look. As if his only purpose was to literally eat something with all of their teeth and massive jaws and all of that. Chaac's skin has this sort of thing in the middle of its chest, and after all, his skin is called the Abyssal Executioner, but he doesn't really make very many, if any, references to actually wanting to consume anything. From what I've seen, does he make any references to Azathoth being defined as a sort of idiot or fool? Those names are in some of his epithets. This skin probably not based off of Azathoth, which Chaac having a skin based off of Azathoth probably doesn't seem that fitting to me personally, to be honest. Not saying it couldn't be done, but Chaac and what I've read about his lore just doesn't strike me as the kind of god to have that sort of depressed enough to want to destroy everything, or that sort of all-powerful ultimate being sort of vibe either. But next up is Yog-Sothoth, was the father of Cthulhu, one of the main deities that's talked about being on the Earth, and he's also an outer god. He's credited as being simultaneously the past, the present, and the future. He knows where the old ones broke through of old, and where they shall break through again. He exists just outside the universe, meaning no secret is truly ever secret to him. He pretty much knows everything, arguably, or at least it's supposed to be implied within the story. But one of his defining abilities is that he can bestow people with power, assuming that they perform the correct ritual or try to access this knowledge in the correct way. The only problem with this is that this power has a tendency to either get the receiver killed in some way or drive them to madness, but this isn't necessarily Yog-Sothoth's intention. He doesn't want to drive these people necessarily crazy, it's just a side effect of his gift. That's one reason why it doesn't really work with the Chaac skin, because whilst the Chaac skin does sort of imply that it wants to drive people crazy or insane for malicious reasons, just check out this voice line.
Once I get inside their heads, it won't be long until they become entirely insane.
In a lot of the depictions of Yog-Sothoth, he's given these several orbs just as his body, as his being, and these orbs might have eyes in them, they might have sort of tentacles or tendrils attached to them in areas. Chaac doesn't seem to have any tendrils, and he definitely doesn't have very many orbs. Maybe his shield has a sort of orb or eye on it, and of course he's got eyes on his Cthulhu-looking head, but aside from that, no, it doesn't really work. The last outer god we're going to be talking about is Nyarlathotep. We're just going to call him Thothet, another son of Azathoth, and he willingly takes the appearance of a man. Within the mythology, he's one of the most loyal sons to Azathoth himself, and acts as sort of a messenger between the outer gods and, well, sort of just the messenger for the outer gods. Now, unlike a lot of the other beings, the other godly beings, he does take a sort of pleasure in driving people insane. He seems to be more inspired by Egyptian mythology, and his designs and a lot of his depictions seem to be somewhat Egyptian, whereas we can see that the Chaac skin not only has been given to a Mayan god, which doesn't necessarily mean too much. It's not like you couldn't transform a Mayan god into an Egyptian god by giving them an Egyptian skin, for instance, but that's not really what seems to have happened with Chaac skin. Because of the fact that the Cthulhu mythos has had so many authors, so many writers, so many different changes in the canon and what works with the story, what's probably happened here is that Hi-Rez has taken influences from the Cthulhu mythos and simply just used it to create their own character, their own skin for Chaac. And that's pretty much what we have. It's not necessarily just one god from Lovecraft's mythos here, but a combination of multiple gods. However, that said, as I said, Lovecraft is not the only author, and I am just going off of Lovecraft's work, not necessarily taking into account the other authors, partially because of the sheer number of other authors and other gods that have been created here. And see, that's the thing with this mythology, is that you can pretty much adapt aspects of it and make them your own, and they can fit within your own version of the canon, and it's your canon, it's not necessarily wrong. Of course, there are debates online as to what is canon, what isn't canon, but at the end of the day, no one can truly say this isn't or this is necessarily, unless you're talking about Lovecraft's work directly, because he of course was the original author. This is sort of his mythos, but because of that, and because it is an incomplete mythos, some things can just never be answered. That was the lore behind Chaac's Abyssal Executioner skin. Tell me, are you going to pick up this skin? Do you like the look of it? Do you think it looks cool? I think it's a pretty decent looking skin. If it's not in a chest, I'll probably consider not picking it up, because I'm not a fan of chests. And I'm not a fan of Chaac, specifically. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, I might make another video on the Cthulhu mythos, so go ahead and leave a like on this video if you genuinely enjoyed it. And of course, if you're new to the channel and want to see more content like this, well, you need to hit that subscribe button. Recently, I found out that you might also need to hit the notification bell as well to actually see my new content. Otherwise, even if you hit the subscribe button, you might not necessarily actually see new things. It doesn't really make sense to me, because if you make the conscious decision to click the subscribe button, surely you'd want to continuously see more content from that content creator that you recently subscribed to. But I don't know, maybe it's a way to just It's not like the site can show you every single person you're subscribed to new videos at once, right? Unless, of course, you hit the notification bell. But with that out of the way, go ahead and check out the video I did on Abyssal Knight Ares. I'll link it in a card, perhaps even the description, but we'll see. And till the next video, have a very good day. I've been Prime, and I'll see you in the next one. Whew. Bye-bye.